Hello, welcome to our viewers. We're just gearing up for another Fireside Chat Friday, and we are preparing to welcome our guest, who will be joining us just shortly. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, you will have the opportunity um, to ask comments and questions and send in questions through the bottom of the screen. We hope that you enjoy this conversation. So we're almost ready to start, and welcome.
Good to
Welcome,
see
Linda.
you. Good to
Good
see you.
to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today.
Well, I'm happy that it worked out.
Oh, I'm so glad. So I'm just going to do a very quick introduction to what we'll be doing today. And for those folks joining for the first time, just like a little background on voices in our work, and then I'll dive right into some questions that I have for you. So if that's okay, I can just quickly do that. So for our listeners, my name is Haneen. I'm representing Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons, and I'll be your host for today's Instagram Live with our guest, Linda Modica, and she is an inspirational member of the Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons community. She is co-founder and co-chair of the Appalachian Peace Center and a longtime advocate in the nuclear disarmament space. So we are very fortunate to have her with us today, and very excited to be asking a couple of questions about her work and her journey that I'm sure everyone will be inspired as they listen to her sharing. For folks joining for the first time, just a little background on Voices. We are an interfaith and intercultural group advocating for nuclear abolition from an intergenerational, ethical, and faith-based perspective. Our leaders, as you've all seen for a few weeks now, span from youth leaders to seasoned diplomats and politicians. We invite you to share these moments with us during Fireside Chat Fridays as we talk about this issue and our role with different leaders and thinkers who are shaping and changing the nuclear abolition landscape. As always, please drop your questions and comments in the chat as we go behind the scenes on Linda's story and ask about what she thinks is most important right now. This video will be available for viewing after the broadcast, and if you're not able to listen to the whole thing, you'll be able to access it later on and take a look. So thank you again for tuning in today, and we now turn to our guest, Linda. So I'm going to jump right in, Linda, and I guess my first question, and that I've been quite curious about, is that what really drew you to join Voices in the first place, and how do you experience community with this group of advocates that we have in our group?
Well, my involvement with Voices just kind of happened. I'm current president of the local cooperation circle, which is called the Northeast Tennessee Cooperation Circle of URI. And but I actually, at this time of 3 or 4 years ago, I was not the president, but I was active. And we were circulating what is generically called a clergy letter, seeking members of the clergy from our area to sign on to a letter that was addressed to our then senator, U.S. Senator Bob Corker, asking for action by the government, federal government, on nuclear disarmament. It was about the it was soon after the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists had moved the doomsday clock to 2 minutes to midnight. So that will help us date back when that letter was. Well, at the time, URI had a regional coordinator who also handled their newsletters. And there was a solicitation for a story. So I sent in a story about our campaign to get our senator who was about to retire. And so we thought, well, maybe naively, thought maybe he would want to have a legacy. Maybe he would want to have a, something to say that I, Bob Corker, took on the climate and the twin existential threats of climate disaster and nuclear cataclysm. That didn't happen, by the way, but we did end up getting about 44 different ministers of various ranks in our area, and also some lay members of various congregations in our area to sign on to the letter. And we did it together with another interfaith group called the Green Interfaith Network. So we delivered it about Earth Day, and had some media, and at about the same time I had done the story, and it showed up in a one of URI's publications. Well, I was in the supermarket, and a few days, completely, done with that project. I was in the supermarket shopping for something to make for supper, and my phone rang, and it was Bishop Swing on the other end, and I had never spoken with him before, and he had read the story, and he invited me to join Voices. So that's how that happened. But regarding your question about community, this has become a community, and more obviously a community. This group of couple of dozen of us now, some of whom come almost every month. Some of, even though we've broken up into teams, doing various aspects of the work toward disarmament. Following Secretary Shultz's death, and on that Sunday, when the media announced his passing, one of our members had sent around an email addressing us as family, and dear Voices family, and then told us about George Shultz's passing. Now, I had been in George Shultz's presence once on a Zoom call. That was it. But I knew how much he was loved by some of our other members, and how close he was to them, how close he was to Voices, and how heartbroken they were. But on the same day, on that Sunday, I also had attended what the Plowshares activists call a festival of hope. It was prior to the Claire Grady's reporting to prison for the action of the Kings Bay Plowshares 7 on April 4th, 2018. And it's a kind of a send-off. Prayers and music and testimonials and Anyway, there was one of the parts of that festival of hope that you'll see relates to George Shultz was that people invoked the cloud of witnesses who had gone before us and who have passed away. And I thought of George Shultz was, in the case of the Plowshares activists, who the first Plowshares actions were done by the Berrigan brothers, who both of them were priests at the time. And so, Phil Berrigan, Daniel Berrigan, they were those folks were mentioned. I mentioned my friend Cynthia Serrano, and maybe we'll talk about that. I don't know later, but anyway, George Shultz is now in that cloud of witnesses for disarmament, and with us with this work. So, but I have a spiritual connection to him, even though I've only met him once in a Zoom room, and one tangible connection with him, and that's that when those of us who were given a little gift of a ginkgo leaf that was harvested from ginkgo trees planted in a garden in San Francisco in his honor, in George Shultz's honor. That is my tangible connection to George Shultz. So in that way, we're a family. So we are a community in that way, and also we all work very hard on this issue.
Oh, that's beautiful, Linda. Thank you for sharing that anecdote with us, and for folks who are listening. It feels like, this element of community is one thing that has been coming up again and again in our conversations, just in terms of building strength and building hope, in the face of these existential issues. Building these resources, almost of these resilient resources, building them together, and coming together for some of this work. So I think the ginkgo leaf and our connection and really, this passing of the baton of leadership from witnesses who have passed, as the beautiful words that you used, to people who are now sort of beginning to take on that mantle of leadership. I think that's an important thing to remember and to honor, and to make sure that we're doing the best we can as we move forward to do the work that these giants have started. So thank you for sharing that story, and I wonder if you could talk about how you've experienced community and how you found strength in community during your own journey as a nuclear disarmament advocate, and if you could tell us a little bit about how that's been for you, and your journey itself a little bit too, like, and just how that experience has been over the years, and really, as you look upon it, like what stands out.
Well, first I want to say that Appalachian Peace Education Center was founded not by me, by the way. I'm a current co-chair, but
Right.
it predated my moving to Tennessee. Not by a whole lot, but it was founded in 1982 as a coalition of groups working on the nuclear freeze, which is really quite amazing, because these communities in Southwest Virginia, it started in Southwest Virginia, it expands to Northeast Tennessee, where I am. our demographics are very similar, by the way. Our area here in Tennessee, maybe a little more densely populated, but not by a whole lot. But anyway, in the very, very rural mountain communities of Southwest Virginia, when Appalachian Peace Education Center, APEC for short, was founded, it was founded in order to get to these very um, uh, these local groups, and there were like a half a dozen of them in various little towns in Southwest Virginia, wanting to put a stop on the very dramatic increase in nuclear weapons production that was going on in the late 70s and early 80s. At that time, I was living in New York, and so I was married for about 5 or 6 years. I had gone to college in the city. I was had gone to graduate school in the city. I was working at the time, but I took time to attend that million-person rally, that March for a Freeze, that still is the largest political protest ever done in the United States on a single issue. And so so I was part of that, and at that point I had heard, and at that rally I heard people like Dr. Helen Caldicott, who at that point was a younger physician and dynamic as all get out, and I was truly inspired. But I grew up in Manhattan. Sounds like it was a that I might have been in an affluent family, but I was not. I was in a working class family. My parents tended the walk-up apartment building that we lived in, and so we lived in the ground floor apartment rooms. And my mother was the one who took care of the building, and so she had to make sure that the place was clean, including the basement. Now, I don't know for sure, because the building has since been torn down, and now is a fancy high rise. And that section of Manhattan is now very, very high class, but it wasn't then. We may have had a bomb shelter in that time when I was growing up. Those were the days when, during the Cold War, when air fallout shelters existed on almost every block of the city. And but I don't know if our apartment building had it. I do remember going down in the cellar with her a lot, because I was a toddler. I had to go with my mother. So anyway, that made a big impression on me. And then later on, when we moved to Ridgefield, New Jersey, and my parents made sure that the house that they bought had a cellar, and we had a deep cellar. It was I was about 10 years old during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I was the younger of two girls, and so it was up to me to go trundling down the stairs, checking on provisions that in those days we were instructed by civil defense to stockpile food, water, canned milk, make sure that you've got a can opener, all that stuff. That terrified me. And one of the earliest memories I have were in that time when of a nightmare. The only memory I have of a nightmare is having terror, just a terrified awakening, dreaming that Godzilla was coming after my sister. Um, so I'd say early impressions made a big had a big effect on me, and led to pretty much a lifelong, or at least in my adulthood,
Hmm.
most of my adulthood, although I spent a lot of time as an environmental activist, in general, just a general environmental activist. Um, uh, but anyway, I have an intent, really, an intent to make this happen, make disarmament happen.
That's that's so powerful, Linda. I think talking to someone who has these experiences and who's participated directly in the freeze movement, and just hearing your telling of what it's like to be in that kind of Cold War environment, and having to feel prepared and feeling frightened, and just sharing a little bit with us about the real lived experience, because I feel like sometimes when we read about this and we analyze it, and when we think about it, academically, sometimes it's um, perhaps in some ways one step removed, and that has its purpose. But just it's so immediate, it's so real, and so tangible as I hear you speak, and it really, for me, and I imagine for maybe many of our listeners too, it just helps us to think about the immediacy of this issue, and how real, how visceral it can be to be living through something like this. And I'm reminded of, for some reason, of the Hawaii, the missile alert that went off
Mm-hmm.
recently. Yeah, yeah, and how folks over there might have
Oh,
felt
terrifying.
living. Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess as you sort of look back and reflect on some of these experiences and how they've shaped your journey of activism, are there any moments as you sort of progressed in that journey that any anecdotes, any stories that you would be so kind as to share with us, as we're having this conversation?
Well, one story I think has always amazed me. The the community around here, like I said, I'm in Northeast Tennessee, and I live it almost daily. The now still the the concern about nuclear um, weapons, because about 10 miles south of where I live is a company called Nuclear Fuel Services, and it is the sole manufacturer of highly enriched uranium for nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers for the Navy, for the nuclear Navy. And they have a firing range where their security uh, people go and practice. And that was the subject of my first correspondence with our brand new state senator, or state representative rather, the other day, because I was out walking with my dog, and it was as if we were at war with the neighboring county. There was so much noise. But anyway, around nuclear fuel services, the issue there is both environmental and safety. The company has had numerous accidents, spills. They pour their waste into the local river called the Nolichucky River, which is the source of drinking water for the towns downstream. And so we organized a group called Irwin Citizens Awareness Network. And one of the members of that group is a woman named Sue. Now, Sue had been a legal secretary. And, but after her daughter, when her daughter was growing up, she became a stay-at-home mom. And stayed that way, even though her daughter is now grown up. And but anyway, we met up with Sue, and Sue wanted to get involved, but Sue didn't have a computer. She could type anybody under the table, but she didn't have a computer. She was never on the internet. She didn't know how to use it. So at the time, fortunately, I was upgrading my own equipment, and actually I was given a computer that was excess from another friend. Brought it down to Sue, showed her how we started off with word processing. She was so brilliant. Sue is so brilliant that basically our idea was we needed a local watchdog group for oversight of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is supposed to be conducting the oversight, but we needed a citizens watchdog group. So we needed Sue to understand all of the documents. So she poured through hundreds of pages of documents, learned how to use the internet, email, now can search the web like a pro, knew, and this would probably even startled Elijah Cummings, God rest his soul, when he got a call, his office got a call from a woman in East Tennessee saying, there's this big deal in Saudi Arabia going down, and I think it's got to do with nuclear, it's going to affect us here because nuclear fuel services is involved. She knew about the Saudi nuclear deal before it was released in the media, and before the office of Elijah Cummings had produced its report on the Saudi nuclear deal. It was amazing. I mean, it just was. In like 6 months, a woman who had never used a computer before, she was on the web. And then the next year, and year after that, she's now. It was better than when my daughter was taking piano lessons. It's like, where it's like, okay, we're doing it together. And then Zoom, she could play Fur Elise, and I'm still on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It was kind of like that. It was just amazing. It just was amazing. So that's a different kind of community, local community, where we work together. And tonight, I just received an email from the president of Irwin Citizens Awareness Network, a woman named Barbara. Barbara had worked as a public affairs officer for the Department of Defense. So she, for a long time, and when And so she took on this watchdog role very seriously, because when she saw, she as a public affairs officer was the one to speak to the public about issues that were being raised, say in Hawaii, wherever she was assigned. And when she saw that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was not being upfront with us here in East Tennessee, she took it personally. And but anyway, she just sent me an obituary of an epidemiologist who we had worked with, who had done the numbers showing how high our cancer rates were. And now I found out tonight that that epidemiologist passed away at the age of 45, which is terribly young. And I don't know whether it was cancer in her case, but we've got a situation here of high cancer rates. We are in a low income, what's often called a sacrifice zone. You've heard it said from our indigenous brothers and sisters out west, where uranium mining and nuclear waste dumping. Yeah, no, just same situation. Nuclear waste in our water supply. That's what we've got here too.
Thank you, Linda, for for shining light on this for so many of us who don't have the same window into the realities that you are spotlighting, and you're kind of like our opening our eyes to the very community level realities of what you and folks whose stories that you've shared are facing. And I'm so inspired to hear about these these acts of everyday resilience and everyday sort of perseverance, like Sue and her journey and her commitment to doing what she could. And in her case that looked like learning to use the computer. But it's so powerful, and it shows how small individual acts, in community, rooted in community, with the love and support of the people around us, they can be so transformative. And I think it's a privilege for us to be able to share some of these stories, and to be able to witness some of what you've drawn our attention to through this broadcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one more story? One more story
Please.
About a woman named Willa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was there was a time when the Nuclear Regulatory Commission came around for a public meeting, and there were concerns. There always have been concerns about nuclear waste in the drinking water. That was because of the dumping on the land, into the river, into the creeks, and also the runoff from nuclear fuel services. So this woman named Willa, a tiny little lady with grayish whitish hair, gets up during the comment period of this meeting, and she said, I didn't know if I was going to speak tonight, but my sister just died of cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, and just about everyone on my street, on Washington Street, has cancer, or a family who has cancer. Then she said, and I think it's the water. Well, a man who knew her, at this point I had no idea. I was sitting in the same row, but on the other side of the aisle from her. A man who knew her said, "What well does your water come from? Do you know?" And she said, "I think it comes from the railroad well." Now, the railroad well has its well, all wells have a catchment area, and it included a good portion of Irwin, where Nuclear Fuel Services is. Well, fast forward, the media was there. Only one member of the media went up to speak with her. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission went the other way. It was like, don't make eye contact. We don't want to know this one. We don't want to hear it. But I was with one of our other members of Irwin Citizens Awareness Network, named Trudy. And Trudy and I sidled over to speak with Willa. So anyway, we went to her house a few days later. And we had gotten a plat map, but showing all the houses on Washington Street. And we went. What she had gone door to door along her street and documented what kind of cancers, who died from it, and there were cases of, and she jotted it down in this notebook. Now, I bring this up because a few years ago, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was going to do a study update a study that had been done decades and decades ago on the cancer risk around nuclear facilities. And Barbara, the head of Irwin Citizens Awareness Network, and I went up to Washington to be at the National Academy of Sciences when the NRC was going to formally ask the National Academy of Sciences to do the study. We wanted to make sure that Nuclear Fuel Services was included. Now, I intended to speak then. I didn't intend to talk about Willa's work on this basically gumshoe epidemiology that she did, but what was startling, and this goes back to your question of community and how we really are all connected in this. Other people, other neighborhoods, nuclear neighborhoods, told stories just like mine, just like the one I just recounted about that somebody's grandmother went door to door, and in another case, somebody's, in Illinois and in Ohio and you name it. Over and over and over again, we heard stories about moms and dads and grandmothers and aunts and uncles, and who, doing it themselves because the government wasn't doing it, and because they wanted to make sure that this cancer study went forward. Well, as it turns out, that cancer study was not done, and the reason they gave was because it was too expensive. It cost too much, and so if there's any doubt in anybody's mind that these weapons are all about money, that this whole industry is just all about money, and money that can be made making these horrible weapons. It just use that instance of just look at that instance of the cancer study, which was too expensive to do because they said that it was too expensive. But the real reason is they didn't want to know. They didn't want to know because that would have put a kibosh on their um, their intent to continue to make money on these weapons. So we've got a lot of, it's a heavy lift, but thanks to community, uh, I'm glad you brought it up. It's really important. And there is I'll tell you, one of the strongest communities and the bonds between people, including with the cloud of witnesses, I've been blessed really to experience is with the Plowshares action activists. Uh, those folks are, in my estimation, heroes, if not saints, um, holy people for sure. That they would risk their lives to bring our attention, to raise the public awareness of the fact that these weapons are still being made, and and that it needs to stop. So yes, I'm I'm really, I consider that uh, a great blessing to be part of this, and and I work hard at it, in part in solidarity with them, to act in solidarity. So thanks.
Oh, thank you, Linda, for this is not easy to share, and to these are not easy stories to relay, and I just want to honor your sharing, and the invisible, and sometimes unknown names who are behind the scenes doing so much activism, and so many efforts to bring this information to light, and often these unsung heroes who so often go under the radar, but who are so committed to what they do, and this almost like this responsibility that they hold for the rest of us, who are more removed,
Mm-hmm.
or who are ignorant in some ways of what's happening, or who don't understand. But so I think that's just want to honor that. That even in not knowing, we can hold space for some of these people, and what they've been doing, and what they continue to do even as we speak. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so thank you for bringing that to attention, and for sharing, and for the and for the love and the commitment and the passion that you bring to the Voices community, and the solidarity that you bring to all these groups and communities that you are a part of, and the way that you are connecting them, like that you are almost the link between these different groups, just by virtue of being part of all of them, and through you we have the good fortune to hear some of this, and be reminded of the importance of this issue, and the work that remains to be done, and the work that is happening behind the scenes that we're not always aware of. So really, thank you for sharing, and for enlightening us today. I in the same spirit, I'm wondering, and you've talked about this just a little bit, but I do wonder how we can do more to uplift one another, and sort of erase some of the boundaries between some of these communities, and expand this community of hope, and community of action, and commitment and dedication to doing more of this good work. I wonder if you have thoughts, especially for the young folks who are watching, who are starting out on this journey that you've been on for so long, and you and many others like you have been sort of carrying that for us. How, now as we sort of step into those shoes, how would you say we can, expand that community and come together and find sort of enlarge our impact and and the influence of our work, in small ways or big ways.
Oh, well, every way you know, is important. Small doesn't matter. Uh, I guess I need to pull out my quote from Thomas Merton. Uh, this is this is something that I try to remember, but I keep it next to my desk. Thomas Merton, which you might know, was a theologian and a Trappist monk
Mm-hmm.
and a peacemaker, and he very actively, well, as much as a monk can, uh, was opposed to the Vietnam War. And so, in a letter to a friend during the Vietnam War, and the friend was asking how, basically your question, how can we make an impact? What can we do? He wrote to his friend and said, "Do not depend on the hope of results. When you are doing," and he used the word apostolic, meaning, doing God's work, "you may have to face the fact that your work will be apparently worthless and even achieve no result at all, if not perhaps results opposite to what you expect. As you get used to this idea, you start more and more to concentrate not on the results, but on the value, the rightness, the truth of the work itself." So my take from Thomas Merton is that if you're that do the work that you love. If it has value, rightness, and truth, it's worth your time. It's worth working hard on. And you may never know. You may never know what effect it will have. But because it's the work that matters. It's the work that has the grace. And and so find the passion and find other people who are as passionate as you are, and you'll be and you end up finding joy in it. Um, tell you, I started off doing it in part because this work for disarmament, in part because in the environmental circles that I was moving in at the time, within the Sierra Club, uh, nobody else was doing it. It's a heavy lift. Yeah, yeah. Especially for, women are, oh, you don't understand this stuff. What do you know about the physics? What do you know? Well, frankly, I don't know anything about the physics. All I know is that it's immoral, unjust, and needs to be stopped. But I do know a whole lot about the environmental consequences, and I know a fair amount about the health effects. But mostly, I know that uh, by the way, my master's degree is in economics, so numbers jump out at me a lot. So when in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists this past week, when they said, why are the headline was, "Why is America getting a new $100 billion nuclear weapon?" The third paragraph of that article says, to put that price tag in perspective, 100 billion could pay 1.24 million elementary school teacher salaries for a year, or provide 2.84 million four-year university scholarships, or cover 3.3 million hospital stays for COVID-19. This is money that should not be spent on weapons that are just made for killing. Instead, we should be spending that money on and these are taxpayer money. This is our money. This is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Remember that. We need to insist that this money goes to serve the people, and so that's what we're up against. And but we're in good company. We're in good company. Find those. We're one of the things that's wonderful about Voices is you and the other young people who are on Voices. And Abolition 2000, from what I understand, has a youth cohort. It's growing. Get together and have fun. And one of the other things that even though it's hard work and you beat your head against the wall a lot, but still, one of the things that I learned early on from a longtime environmental activist is to celebrate every now and then, celebrate. And that's one of the reasons why the Plowshares activists the other day, two Sundays ago, even though their fellow Plowshares activist Claire Grady was going into prison, had a festival of hope, and it was, and there was music and humor, and so celebrate successes. And that's why we celebrated the TPNW entering into force, because good things do happen. But as Thomas Merton advised, don't worry about what just basically keep at it. Just basically keep at it. So, and have fun at it.
Thank you, Linda. That's the note of inspiration that we all need. In this moment in time, where we're all, we're all trying to fight the good fight and keep at it. So thank you for sharing that. Is there, maybe a prayer or a hope or an intention that you would leave us with as we conclude today's fireside chat? Or even a thought? Any concluding words?
Well, I guess I should. There is a prayer that is really well. I'm Catholic, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I feel a closeness with the Plowshares activists, who are mostly Catholic, and an admiration for Catholic workers who do the hard job of the work of feeding the poor and the hungry and sheltering them. And so, and I'm also, because I'm Catholic, I admire the work of Pax Christi. So Pax Christi, Northern California, produced, I don't know if you could see this beautiful prayer card last year,
Yeah.
about the time of the anniversary of the 75th commemoration of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they wrote a prayer for disarmament. So if I could say that would be, I think, beautiful.
Please.
So it goes, breath of us all, breath of all that is, preserve us from our own madness, direct us away from dealing destruction to others, a path which leads to the ruin of ourselves and our world. Protect us. Help us to hear you. Jesus Christ, beloved, show us your precious face in all others, you in us and we in each other, from all places. Teach us how to lower our defenses. Feed us love, which transcends fear. Heal us. Help us to let go of all fear. Holy Spirit, you call us in our minds, in our world, and through each other. Speak to us. Speak through us. When we worship power, control, money, when we cannot forgive or shove pain onto others, call us. Light the fire of love. We will not be afraid. We will not be afraid. Love transcends all fear. You are with us always. Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me say that. They did
Thank you
such a
for sharing.
beautiful job. This artwork is just spectacular.
Oh, it is. It really is.
So
And
that's
thank
from
you for
Christy, Northern.
Northern California, did you say?
Yes, Fox Christie,
Gotcha.
Northern California.
Northern California. Perfect. Thank you, Linda. This has been a very rich exchange, and I am just so honored to have been able to host this. And we'll be sharing the video for folks to watch later, and we'll send it your way as well. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Linda.
thank you. I enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
night.
good night. Bye.